Welcome to another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. How are you all? This is a live one today, Stephen. How's it going?
Yeah, we're going live because it's just me and you shooting this shit today. Today we're going to chat about our best and worst deals.
Ooh, best and worst deals, right? Okay, cool. So we've prepared a couple of case studies each. Well, I've only got one. Stephen's got a couple, I think, but we will get on to that later. First of all, if you're joining live here and you want to drop us a wee comment and say hello, if you've got any questions, then put them in the comments box. We'll be able to see them pop up. That'd be good. But first of all, to kick us off, we just want to mention our up-and-coming networking events, which we are hugely excited about, Stephen.
Yep, and we're both crapping ourselves about it because the ticket sales have been going probably a lot better than we thought. So we're going to have quite busy rooms, and we're obviously really excited and nervous about putting on a good event, something that's engaging, that you can see people, delivering value and people can enjoy the evening. So yeah, we're looking forward to it, but we're also quite nervy about it.
So I'm just dying to do that social media post, that video where, I've only got 3 places left. Like, we're selling out quick, and usually when you see that, it's these gurus who are selling you these courses and basically, they're talking shit. They've got like 30 places still available and they're trying to tell you that it's down to the last 1 or 2,
I feel like you're attacking my post yesterday about my one place left on my workshop because someone's got COVID. It's genuine.
Was that actually genuine, was it?
It's genuine one, yeah, unfortunately.
I know you're fully authentic, mate, but
Nick,
no.
You are actually almost sold out the Glasgow event, which we're quite competitive with it. And I was saying that we're going to get good numbers at Aberdeen, but you have almost sold out your event. You're only what 8 or 9 tickets off away.
Yeah, so I was speaking to the Glenhill Hotel yesterday, and they said that, due to the size of the room and COVID and all the rest of it, they said that you're probably better capping it at 50. We've actually sold 41. So, yeah, there's only 9 spaces still available, and we've still got a week to go. So I think, obviously, people are really excited because they've not been able to network to any event like this for probably nearly 2 years now, 18 months at least. And just want to get back to the in the room face-to-face networking. I think Zooms are fine, but I think people are just a bit fed up now and they just want to get back in the room, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I'm excited about it as well. Like I've said that before, the people that we've kind of connected with on social media and through the podcast over the last couple of years, and you've never met them personally, but you feel like you've kind of got that bit of you know them pretty well. You feel like you know them pretty well, and relationships that take it to the next level and potentially do business and property is being in the same room, having a coffee, having a chatting more, getting to know each other on a different level. That's when the beauty comes from when people end up doing business together. So I think people have missed that.
Absolutely. So, guys, our events are across Scotland. We've got Aberdeen, Dundee, and Glasgow all on the same night. It's November the 3rd. It's Wednesday, November the 3rd, starting at 6:30. If you would like a ticket, tickets are £20. Please get over onto Eventbrite. Like I said, there is still space, but probably in the next couple of days we will be getting to that point of selling out. So get over there. How was that for a sales pitch, mate?
Mate, that was quite good. You look like a natural there.
And actually, while I'm on, I want to announce our guest speaker. So I'm delighted and excited to announce that we're getting Davy Hutton along. So a lot of people who are in Glasgow know Davy Hutton from the radio adverts. It's quick sale sold, and didn't do that very good impression there. But he is the owner of Quick Sale Estate Agency, and he's got a load of experience in the property. He's been in the property game for I don't know how long, just like so long. He's got so much experience. He's got good views on how the market's going at the moment as well. So it'd be great to hear his take on it. It's going to be a kind of live podcast format. So I'll be interviewing Davey at the front of the stage.
That's good, mate. At the last networking event I ever attended, it was in Glasgow a few years ago, and it was Davy Hutton that was the guest speaker. And he was phenomenal, really, really good knowledge, and doesn't sugarcoat it. He's very much like us. He'll just say it the way it is, no bullshit, no fluff, just and like you say, he's been in the game a long time, so he's got a lot of good experience and knowledge to share. So that'd be a good one. What kind of questions are you going to ask him? And are you going to talk about the market conditions or?
Well, I think he's got his finger on the pulse about things like inflation and all that, market conditions. So I'm really interested in that as well. But obviously, he's out there day in, day out, speaking to motivated sellers because he's obviously structured his estate agency as a quick sale company. So it'll be interesting from the point of sourcing deals as well for all us property investors who are looking to try and get a deal still. Are there still deals out there? What's he experiencing? What are people just expecting now to get over and above the home report for the properties because of this recent boom? You know, all that sort of stuff. It'll be good to kind of pick his brain. I hate that expression, but we'll be picking his brain on tonight. Who are you getting up in Aberdeen?
So I've roped in Sam Dyer to talk about it because I really wanted to talk about the focus on Aberdeen. Obviously, the fact that Sam worked in the oil and gas industry for a short period of time before going into property full time, and I couldn't really think it. Like there's probably a handful of people that are very, very active in Aberdeen, and quite a lot of them are in my network as well. And I couldn't really think of anyone more suited for the first one than Sam because he's got a kind of overall view of Aberdeen. He's from the area. He was born and bred and grew up in a village nearby. Obviously moved into the Central Belt, worked offshore, and now because of the market conditions, he's buying a lot of properties in Aberdeen. So I thought it'd be quite a good, compelling story to talk about the properties he's buying. But don't worry for the people that are attending. I'm not going to let him do a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to try and interview him, get people that know me. I'll ask them the real questions. If anyone's got any questions on me, ask them. I'll ask them outright live. I won't give me time to prep for it as well. I'll put him on the spot, and then there's some more case studies of stuff he's done in Aberdeen to show the audience kind of what's available in the city, because he's got quite a diverse range of deals that he's picked up the last year and a half as well. So they're ranging from kind of lower end 40 grand flats to 200 grand properties as well. So it'd be quite nice to see what's working and not working. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
The thing I like about Sam is he's consistent, he's doing the do, and he's proven himself over the years that he is really active, and he doesn't talk shit either. You can tell that from watching his Instagram account. So it'd be good to see him.
That's the problem. He can't talk shit, and he keeps going into too much detail, so he flipping puts people to sleep. So if I can try and, because I know his personality, I'll try and extract the good out of him without let him go into too much details. But I mean, I get him presenting on my workshop and he does a phenomenal job. But I absolutely annihilated him the last time because he had all the numbers and it was all in pounds and pence for every deal. That's so much fucking upfront he is with everything. He's like, he couldn't just fluff it. He couldn't just round it up to, it was 200 quid. It was 213 pence. Like, it was like, everything was done down to the penny, which is good. And obviously I'm in business with him for that reason. He's so detail orientated, but no one wants to listen to that for 45 minutes. So don't worry, I will be asking him the right questions and getting the right the stuff people want.
Let's give Dundee a mention as well, because we've got Kessel Salimi in Dundee with Paul Cummins, and Linda Martin is their guest speaker. So a good friend of the show, Linda Martin.
Yeah, Linda will be a great speaker. She just recently spoke at the first PIN event, I think, that went live. So Linda's a really good property developer. She's one that, if you're looking to do flips right now, go and follow Linda Martin and check her out, because she doesn't try and go for the below market value property. She doesn't try and negotiate hard negotiations. She pretty much pays market value. But what she'll try and do is, through a renovation, she'll be really creative for renovation, and she'll try and pay attention to the market conditions, what's selling, what's in demand, what's really hot. And she'll push the ceiling price of the property she then sells on. So the property profit margin is not in, negotiating a 20%, 25% below market value in a ridiculous market. She actually pays home report or even above home report, but she'll push the ceiling price of a certain property type in a certain area to still make her profit. So she's got really, really good knowledge. She's been doing it a long time as well. Dundee's got a really cracking lineup as well. It's a shame that we're elsewhere, mate, and we can't be at all these events.
We'll need to start doing a wee kind of trip around Scotland to kind of show face at these as well. So we will do that in future events. We'll try and get around a few different locations. And we don't want to leave Edinburgh out. I want to mention Edinburgh as well. We are coming to Edinburgh. It's just we haven't managed to get things organised. Gary Wales is going to do our Edinburgh event.
Yep, so Gary Wales has got Edinburgh lined up first Wednesday in December. I think it's the 1st of December. So he'll be joining us, and it'll be the 4 cities on the 1st of December. So I don't think he's got a guest speaker confirmed, but he's got his venue confirmed. He's going to have all the details. The details will be coming out soon as well. So Edinburgh, because people have been asking me about Edinburgh, which is nearest to me. So looking forward to Edinburgh as well.
Cool, guys. If you somebody's asked here, Darren Black's asked, can we get a link? If you just go on Eventbrite and just type in Scottish Property Podcast, you will see all the locations pop up there. Okay, let's get on to our next item on the agenda today. I pulled out a news story because I love talking about these things. Stephen despises them. He hates talking about these news articles because he thinks they're a load of shite. But I think it's good to have your finger on the pulse and to see the data that's coming through. What's your argument against these sort of things, Stephen?
I just think that, we're in the spearhead of what's happening in the market. You know when a market's hot, you know when a market's not, you know when something's moving, you know when the market's booming in rental demands in Glasgow. You've been sharing this in the podcast recently. But what I always find is a newspaper article will come out a year later about that. Oh, Glasgow rents are fucking booming, like they're paying more than they'll start writing this article, but Nick's been talking about the podcast for a year. So yeah, I get your point. They put data against it, but I always feel like if people are relying on news articles to influence their mind and their decisions on a market, they're probably well far behind proper investors, because investors have got their finger on the pulse. They're listening to podcasts, they're out speaking to people, they're estate agents or letting agents, and they're in the mix. So I always kind of feel like you read an article and you're like, yeah, we fucking know that happened 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. It just always seems like it's always so far behind by the time the data catches up, which is fine. And I get your point as well, that obviously it's quite nice when you know it and you see it to then put data against it and say, oh, actually, here's the statistics now against what the property prices have risen, or rental demand is and stuff like that.
So I'll read the headline out in a minute, because people will be like, what are they talking about here? But I used to work in newspapers, so I'm a bit of a news junkie. So I do a lot of kind of reading of the news and stuff like that. And I think it's important because, like Stephen says, we are out on the ground. We're doing the do. We're out. We know the trends that happen because we see them, right? But you want confirmation of that, and that comes in the data. And obviously, the data is lagging. There's a time lag there, but I just like to see and confirm it that it is actually happening. Then once you look back on the data, then you can look forward and say, right, well, this has happened in the past. Is this going to happen in the future maybe as well? And then start making decisions, especially now where we're at a state in the economy where it's very fragile just now. It almost feels like there's a kind of tipping point coming, or a turning point. So for me, I like reading about all this stuff, and I want to give the listeners some of this as well. So bear with me, Stephen. I'm going to read out the article here. So it's an article to time me. So Zoopla have put out an article, and they've said that they're expecting house prices to rise by 3% in 2022. So number one question we always get is, what house price is going to do? We're going to have a crash. What's going to happen, right? So what they've done is they've produced this article, and they've looked back at the last year, and they've said, due to all the huge demand, it's basically a supply-demand issue, right? Huge demand, hardly any supply. What's the number one thing you talk to estate agents about? They always talk about there's no stock. I always say stock, there's no stock. I think that's going to be a problem for years. I don't think that problem is going to go away overnight, right? Which is why they're saying things are still going to rise in 2022, but by not as much, because after the pandemic, we had this huge pent-up demand. Everybody was looking for more space. Loads of people had extra savings. Mortgage interest rates were at an all-time low, and lending was cheap. Loads of really good deals for first-time buyers as well. All this fueled the over the last few months this massive boom which we have had in 2021, and prices going up 7% across the UK on average. I think it was 6.6% on average across the UK. They're now saying on average next year it'll be 3%, right? So why are they saying that? Well, obviously, you look at what's happening with inflationary pressures. Obviously, the rise cost of energy, things are just getting more expensive. The rise in the cost of labour. Obviously, companies are going to have to pass this cost on to all of us, basically consumers. Price of everything's going to go up. People are not going to have as much money to think about moving house and stuff like that. Mortgage deals already, we've seen some of the mortgage lenders take away some of their amazing fixed rate deals, or notch them up a little bit already, because they're predicting that interest rates are going to be starting to rise soon. As soon as interest rates start rising, that obviously knocks onto mortgage rates as well, makes the cost of borrowing more expensive. I agree with this article. I think there will be a kind of decrease in the demand, which is good news for us investors, because the last few months have been a nightmare to try and find a deal. If we've got a decrease in the demand in the wider market, then obviously we're hoping that that'll be good for us in terms of getting deals. And you're not fighting, you're not going out to viewings and seeing 12 to 20 people at the same viewing. You're not going at closing dates and all this. I think there will be that. I don't think it's just going to die overnight, but I think it will definitely get a little bit easier come 2022 once this inflation and the result of the inflation starts kicking in.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think you're the boom that we saw. It's too hot at the moment. It was going to have to calm down and slow down eventually. And I think I've already noticed it slowing down a little bit. So yeah, I think that article does make sense. But what did they state? We saw property prices went up 6.6% on average.
On average, yeah. So 6.6%, and that's in all of the regions across the UK over the past kind of 12 months. I'll just read out a quick thing, right, and then you can blow the bell. Sorry, you can ring the bell, mate, and tell me my time's up, right? So it says here, the outlook for house price inflation and overall sales volumes is expected to be a balance of positive and negative influences in 2022. The impact of the pandemic on home buying decisions has further to run, albeit it will be less frenetic. This will be supported by the scale of financial gains homeowners have seen in the value of their homes in 2020. Primarily, market momentum catalysts for 2022 stem from the ongoing revaluation of housing needs, increased equity, and moves in the part of the labour force to more hybrid working. Taken together, these factors will continue to bring buyers and sellers into the market. So, yeah, that's probably enough mentioned about that. So,
it's good. I was speaking to a couple of local estate agents recently, and they were pretty much saying that 10% above home report, and more is where you need to be to secure a property now, and that's pretty much everything that's come on the market. So, it's hot, but I think it is cooling off a little bit. There isn't as much, offers at these closing dates I've been hearing.
Cool. Okay, let's get on to the main subject of today, which is
our best and worst deal. So this is a common question that myself and Nick get asked as well. Like, people want to know, facts and figures. They want to know, pain points, lessons learned, stuff along the way, and obviously they want to know the successes as well. So we thought we would share a couple of our deals, best and worst deals. So Nick, tell us your best and worst deal. I think you've got a combo one.
I'm going to combo because I thought this was a perfect example to give people about how property is a long game, right? And this is what we tell people all the time. If you're looking to get into property for a get rich quick or a quick gain, then think again, because it is not that. And this example demonstrates that absolutely perfectly, right? So I'll give you the address because I did a wee bit of research. I had to go back in land registry and find out the exact, prices and dates and stuff like that. But I'll give you the exact address. It's a property in Glasgow, probably my third ever property purchase. Flat 1/2, 54 Minerva Way, Glasgow, in the Finnieston area of Glasgow. Now, I purchased this back in 2006, pre-crash, financial crash, at the time where Finnieston in Glasgow was not an amazing place to live. Like now, it is rated one of the top places in the whole of UK. I think it was in the Times newspaper, it was voted one of the trendiest places to stay. Loads of cool restaurants, cafes, that sort of thing. Quite hipsterish as well. Do you know what I mean? So that was because I bought there. Obviously, that's what made it.
You drove the place up.
So I actually lived in that flat myself back when I was younger, and I've been in it for a few years. But anyway, purchase price in March 2006, and I hope you're writing this down, by the way. Purchase price 151,000, right? And this was quite new build. Yeah, 151,000. They just built them in 2005, and they were still building them in 2006. So it was a new development by Barratt's, right? So I bought it for £151,000. Lived in it for a couple of years. Obviously, the financial crash hit in 2007, 2008, probably 2008, right? 2008 crash hit. There was properties selling in that same development in 2009 for £100,000, right? So
Painful.
pretty much within a couple of years and only a couple of months after the crash happened, where all the banks started collapsing, that property dropped in value by about 50 grand, right? I was like, oh my God. And I was trapped. I was kind of stuck in the mortgage deal that I had at the time. Because obviously what happened was you couldn't remortgage because I was sitting in negative equity. So I was like trapped in the deal. And then things, obviously interest rates, it went on to the standard variable rate. And then I was paying quite a high rate on the mortgage. And there's nothing I could do. But obviously the rent was still clearing the interest rates. So interest only mortgage. I didn't put a huge amount down on it. I think it was like an 85% loan to value at the time. So I probably only put in about 20 grand or something. I can't remember the exact figures. But yeah, so I was stuck in the standard variable rate. It was probably the interest rate for the mortgage. The mortgage repayments were probably about £500 a month. By this time, I'd moved on and I was renting it out. And I think I was making about, I think it was the rent at that time was maybe 550 to 600. So I was actually probably making a loss by the time I paid for factors, fees, and all the rest of it. Not a huge loss, but a small loss. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, things kind of like stayed quite, they didn't really move much.
Would you ever consider at that time to let it get repossessed, let the bank take it off you? Because, like you say, if you're in an 85% loan to value, you'd be a mortgage of 130, 135, and it's now worth 100 grand. You could have just walked away and let them take it off you. Obviously, you're losing money every month. Did that ever cross your mind?
For a couple of years, I was kind of like, I was still living there. So I was like, this, although I am like losing money here, I was like, what's the alternative? Like renting off a private landlord. So because it was my home at the time, it was slightly different. I then came on to let it out. And obviously then I was kind of still making a small loss, but I had other properties which were kind of supplementing that. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to hold on to this because I think it's a good area and I think it will come up in value. So
what did you see about the area back then that you thought it was going to be an up and coming area? What was the changes? What was going on?
There was a lot of development. There was a lot of new build development going up, a lot of new blocks of flats. It was quite close to university, not prime West End location, but it was kind of on the kind of edge of the West End. Do you know what I mean? Going into a kind of slightly rougher area in Anderston. So I thought, well, this is going to pop here because there's so many developers putting money into this. So if you see an area that's getting redeveloped and there's a lot of money going into it to regenerate it, there's a lot of regeneration money going in, then obviously I think that's a good sign to invest in an area. I would also say if you're seeing the likes of commercial properties investing quite heavily in the area as well, or like cafes and restaurants opening up, I think that's a good sign to invest in an area as well. And a lot of these big companies, even big companies like McDonald's and Lidl's and stuff like that, if they're starting to pop up stores in areas too, they're obviously seeing they put a lot of money into market research as well. So stuff like that. Anyway, so.
Yeah. So this really was your worst deal, but you still held up this property, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm sitting there and say, roll on 4 or 5 years, I've been making a small loss in the property. The rent's not making any cash flow. And I'm thinking, this is terrible. This is the worst purchase I've ever made, considering, I've now bought a couple more properties in 2010, 2011, where, I bought them for cash, refurbed them, got my money back out, and they're cash flowing well. Do you know what I mean? I'm sitting here, 2015, 2014, I'm thinking, do I sell this place? What do I do? It's not really going up in value. Things have come up a little bit, but they weren't going massively up, and I still couldn't remortgage because I was just still at negative equity. So then 2015, I actually did, it sits just over the back of the Hydro Arena in Glasgow, the Hydro, which is basically where they've got the COP26 at the moment in Glasgow. And I was like, 2015, I was like, I'm going to put this is when the Airbnb and all that started to come about, service apartment. I then put it to an essay, and I was like, straight away, I was making like £120 a night or something. So I did that for a few years, and that was really good money. So then it turned into a really good investment quite quickly overnight. And then obviously, you know the story. I got fed up of doing the Airbnb and the SA stuff. I just couldn't be bothered with it anymore. Then I put it back on standard rent. Rents had increased, so they'd gone from like $550 I was getting way back. They'd gone up to like $850 I get now, and they've actually even gone up again to, I think the standard rent for it at the moment is about £1,000 a month. I think that's what you can get now, and I only rented it at $850 about 18 months ago. Do you know what I mean? So this is why now I'm sitting here thinking the current value of this property now is 200 grand for a 2-bedroom.
So you've went from 2006 at 151, 2009 to 100 grand, where you've got a 50 grand loss if you liquidate it and sold it on.
Yeah.
Cash flow's terrible. It's washing its face if they're making a small loss. Rent increases have went up into 850 to now £1,000, and in 2021 you're at 200k, so you're up 50k now.
Exactly.
That's pretty phenomenal. That's pretty phenomenal to see the trends, the up and down market trends.
That's 15 years. 15 years. And I always say to people, have a 20-year, like viewpoint when you're getting into property. Do you know what I mean? Now that might be quite off-putting to people, but I think it's like, if you want to build a decent portfolio, I think you've got to think that far ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's a lot to be said for your kind of strategy as well. Like you kind of downplay yourself about this whole slow and steady and building it. But I had a very similar position with one in Cowdenbeath, a 3-bed ex-council that I stayed in for a couple of years, and very, very similar. But the moment I could exit, I think I exited in 2018. I think it was about 6 grand more than I paid for it. Like I pretty much put it on the market for what I bought it and got 6 grand more because I'd got a wee light refurb on it. So I pretty much washed my face, the exact same situation. But right now, because of the rise in the last 3 years, that property is probably up at 145, 150. So that actually just held my nerve and didn't bother thinking about the negative side of it and exit, and thought from a longer point of view, I probably would have been up a hell of a lot more cash than I won on that property.
Yeah, so that was it. And looking back on it, I'm looking at figures and going, so 15 years, it's gone up in value 50 grand. What's that? Capital growth average over 15 years. I think it was like about 2% on average year on year, which doesn't sound great considering property prices at the moment in Glasgow are going up about 10%. But now that it's on that, the last kind of, I would say in the last year, things have started motoring. Do you know what I mean? Previous to that, things were only going up, 3% in Glasgow, 3 to 5% maximum. So now, if things continue, which, again, previously to what I was saying there, I don't think they will continue going at the rates they are. But, I'm on that kind of good point of capital growth now. And that was because, I bought in a good area. I mean, it wasn't an amazing area, but it was a good area. I mean, I could have bought in a really shit area and I'd still be struggling to get that. I would probably still be sitting in negative equity. Even some places in Glasgow at the moment haven't recovered,
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good point. That's good. So your worst deal will become your best deal.
Worst deal becomes the best deal, mate. So let's get on to you. Give us a case.
I kind of thought I would do more flips because I knew you were going to do a buy-to-let one. So I thought I would try and swing it on the side, the opposite side of the spectrum. So I'll start on the same trend. I'll do it as the worst deal. So one of the worst deals I bought was 34 Struan Drive in Inverkeithing. And the reason why I bought it was my mum and dad had just recently divorced. And when I went to help my mum look for a wee house, she was very much looking for the future proof of, I need to be on the one level, I need to be a little bungalow and all this kind of stuff. And it was very much the top of our priorities. So I hadn't flipped any bungalows and stuff like that, but I saw the huge demand for it when she was trying to buy one, and obviously how competitive that part of the market was. And a lot of developers don't build bungalows and little things like that because you can get a 4-bed, 5-bed detached house on the same plot of land that can get more and they're for families. So it looked like there's a bit of demand. So it was on the market. Spoke to a local estate agent, brought it to me, let me see it. Went to a closing date and just thinking that I could push the market value on it. So it was a 2-bed detached bungalow on its own plot, mature garden. Like the trees were that overgrown, you couldn't even see the cottage. I think you remember commenting on my Facebook on it at the time, Nick. When I picked up the keys to find it, I couldn't even find the flipping house. I was like, where is this house that we bought? The trees were also overgrown. The new Queensferry crossing was a way to open, and this was like the top junction going onto it. So I thought for commuters or people just being that location, it's bus routes, all this kind of stuff. I was just doing my normal market research on it. So the renovations went really well. It was smooth, nothing too onerous. It was a light refurb. It was a full refurb, big landscaping job. Rewired, new heating system throughout, plaster decorated, new kitchen, bathroom, fully floored. It was nothing too onerous. We ended up spending about 26 grand on the renovation. And what kind of went wrong at the time was a combination of things. I was on a bridging loan at the time, and I'd been using bridging for about a year and a half, 2 years at the time. And because every property that I touched turned to gold, and I used to sell it at closing dates at the 6-month rule, I never actually understood the small print in bridging loans that if you went over your 6-month required bridge term to your year term, which is your max term, then your interest rate doubles. Whereas if you had said, I want it for 9 months or a year, you would have got a slightly higher rate, whereas we were trying to go for the slightly lower rate to be in and out quickly and pay less holding costs. So the holding cost on the bridging loan, remember, it was about 0.75% a month. And I'm sure off the top of my head, about 600 quid a month. So at because we had quite a few renovations on the go at the time, it wasn't ridiculously quick. And then when we put it on the market, it just stalled. And at the 6-month point, about a month later, a couple of months later, when we were expecting to get that sale through, the bridging loan doubled to 1.5%. So it was up at 1,200 quid, plus the 200% council tax, plus the utilities on it. So we're probably out going about 1,500 quid, 1,600 quid a month on this one cottage.
Wow.
And it just stalled for months on the market. Probably, it probably doesn't sound as bad as it was, probably 3 or 4 months in the market. But back then, when you're on a bridging loan and you get that much cost and you've got 3 or 4 other projects in the go, you were soon eating into, and you're becoming that motivated seller that we're all looking for. So
yeah, you're the motivated seller now. Yeah,
you're pretty much needing to cash out just to get rid of this bridging loan, and so we end up selling it for 128,000, I think it was. So it wasn't a loss. It probably would have been a break, and even if it factored in all our holding costs, but it was quite a horrible deal. And at the time when you were looking at it, I couldn't understand why it lined up. The market research was right. The estate agent that I relisted it with couldn't understand it either. They thought it was going to go to a closing date within a week and sell. We ended up spending a bit more money about 3 or 4 months into being on the market, and we dressed the property, and then it's sold after that. So it kind of proved the concept of dressing about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. This one was. So dressing wasn't a thing. Everyone was just flipping. You remember that, Nick? Everyone was just flipping, and it was blank walls, plain carpet. There was nothing on furnished.
Yeah. The builders refurb. Yeah.
Basic refurb, walk in, put your stuff in it, there you go. But we dressed this, and it seemed to have worked on the market. But because of how long it sat on the market, the old couple that were buying it knew they didn't need to pay over the asking price. They could have negotiated under, which they did, and ended up getting it for 128 grand. Now, big lessons learned for me on that was having the plan B in your head to pivot quite quickly with stuff like this, because the valuation came back at 140. So if we had pivoted and put on a 75% loan to value mortgage to clear the bridging loan, we probably left about 15 grand in the deal. It would have been a great little SA cottage. It was dressed, it was fine, and we probably would have done okay with it, because if we didn't stick and hold in the market for that 5-6 months extra with the running costs, we probably would have done all right. We probably would have kind of walked away, got less of that money in the deal. But it probably goes back to your point, Nick, as well, about the property being that long, like taking it from a longer point of view. But when your sole purpose of the project is a flip, you want this exit, you want to move on, and there was more projects up and coming. If we had,
can I just pause you there, mate? Can I just ask you a question that's popped into my head? Your mindset at that time of your property kind of journey, career, whatever, were you kind of blinded a little bit by quick in and out, you just want the lumps of cash and all that, rather than building a buy-to-let portfolio?
Yeah, and this was after clause 24, and I was kind of scunnered with the fact exchanges happening, and so I was wanting to exit the property name, and the company originally was set up to build up a portfolio with a business partner. But when the market was, everyone thinks the market's going nuts now. The market was going very, very buoyant back then, like 3-4 years ago. They started to move quite quickly. So, I thought, well, let's cash out. And everything we're putting on the market was getting a little bit of an inflated home report, and it was selling maybe 10-15% over the home report again. So each property was making decent profit. And I thought, well, if I quit my job offshore, I can sustain my income by doing these flips. So the mindset wasn't quite tweaked for, it was running with the market conditions. And then I'll go back to the portfolio later on. So it probably been quite a nice point to be more open to these other, plan B, plan C, and pivoting quite quickly, because what's kind of kicking me, because this has come up a couple of times recently, what kicks me now is obviously the way the market's sitting right now. Is if I had just waited 3 years, put a 2 or 3 year fixed term on this mortgage, left a few grand in the deal, essayed it, rented it out, I probably could have sold this property for 160, maybe more right now. So I probably could have, a few years later, I could have exited with a 30-40 grand profit rather than on it. So there was definitely less learning.
That's you've just cut out there, Stephen. Bad signal. That's you back in again. Seems to be a common theme developing here at this moment in time. I'm hearing a lot of people coming to me saying they flipped a property back in 2016, 17, 18, whatever. They made 10 grand or something like that. But then they're like, I wish I'd kept that property, because that would have come up in value so much. I would be probably, 20, 30 grand sitting in equity. Plus, I would have had all that rental income as well. And I would be building a cash flowing asset into my portfolio as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely a time and a timing thing. Like, depends on what time you're at in your journey and what you're doing at that time and what you require. If you need the extra £300 a month cash flow, or you need the quick lumps, it really depends on what you're trying to do. Because I've done exactly the same. I've kicked myself a lot of the properties that I flipped right at the back of the repossessions in 2009-10 when the market crashed. These were 2 and 3 bed X council houses for 50, 60 grand, and like you say, made 12, 14, 15 grand, like nothing ridiculous, stuff I wouldn't do now. But right now, these properties are all sitting at 125 to 140. Like, it's a fucking good increase. And like you say, you would have had really good cash flow and assets would have built up. But yeah, at a time, I was borrowing money off credit cards to put down deposits and do refurb on credit cards just to build up that pot again from being stung with a crash as well. So I think it's all a timing thing.
Question about your bridging, right? When that came to an end, right, after 6 months, and you basically, those costs started spiraling up. How does that work, right? Because I don't have a great deal of experience in bridging, but do they start asking you for the repayments like there and then or do they roll it up into the loan or something?
The maximum, the term is like over. I think it was over a year. If you went over a year, you paid 5%. But because you asked for the bridge at 6 months, you were going to exit. You got your kind of upfront rate, but it went from 0.75 to 1.5 from 6 months to a year. After a year, I think it continued on, but you at 1.5, but you paid 5% fee for going over the year's term as well. So almost after these deals, I started to look into the fine print of the bridging loans in more detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this time, we got hit with a lot of the stuff we were doing at the time. At this moment in time was 3 bed X local authority houses that were easy to flip. They were the low hanging fruit. In and out with a 20, 25 grand refurb and make 20 grand profit, 25 grand profit all day long. Churning them out, looking for something a bit more bespoke, the bungalows, the cottages, bigger houses. And at the time, we had a few projects that were trying to expand and grow into bigger, the flip projects that I'm probably doing now, just that leveling up, just keep leveling up and getting bigger and better. But at these time, quite a few of these kind of stalled and they didn't sell as quick, which, looking back at it, that's why I've always liked the 3-bed house concept, because you can always exit it to a first-time buyer, a single person, a young family, a growing family. It pretty much goes to the full demographics, this house price point, whereas going for a bungalow or going for a cottage, it's only a niche into the one small market, elderly people that are looking for their retirement or for that forever home. So yeah, it was quite an interesting concept as well, but it was some good lessons learned as well.
Good lessons learned there. I like that. I like it. So we're at 40 minutes. We probably shouldn't go on. We've got time for. Do you want to just quickly your best ever win?
Right, I'll go for the best one, and I'll put on a flip as well. So, like I said, I'm trying to cover a couple of flip stuff. Now it depends on. I've kind of come up with 2 because it depends if it's a financial reward or it's not always about money with some of these projects. Like the one that I done in Viewfield Terrace was a commercial residential. It's probably my favourite, best deal, but it wasn't a financial best deal. It was just an enjoyable deal because you were turning this traditional Victorian terraced house that was residential 120, 30, 40 years ago when it was built, and be used in office space for 50 years. It was dingy, dark, just a horrible space, and you can bring it back to its former glory and put it where it should be. But reinstating cornicings and making it suitable to like a modern family house as well was such a nice challenge. It was a big project, a lot of work involved. It was 6 months, but there was such a kind of a feel of pride on doing that project more than the
Where
kind
was
of
this again?
This was in Viewfield Terrace in Dunfermline. So it was an office space that we converted to a 4/5 bed traditional house. So we purchased it for 215,000. I think we spent about 75 grand off the top of my head, but it was a big project. There was a lot of steel work involved, obviously, to try and open up the spaces, the small enclosed spaces, to more modern family living, where it was open plan, kind of kitchen, lounges, and all this kind of stuff. So really, really cool project. So it was 6 months, and we sold it for 357.5 grand.
Wow.
So there was a decent bit of profit, but there was 3 years involved in it, so it was split 3 ways. So it wasn't a hugely financial reward, but for me, it kind of made me. I just enjoyed the project. I enjoyed bringing it back to its kind of glory, reinstating kind of original features, stuff like that, and then seeing the end result was phenomenal. So yeah, that was probably one of my favourite projects, but not financially. And then once we're chatting about doing these deals, I kind of just thought of one recently, and it was basically just to kind of give the listeners a bit of different viewpoints from risk reward. So this one, obviously, between sourcing, negotiating, raising the finance, doing the 6-month development, and selling, you're pretty much a year all in to make not a huge amount of money on it, because there was 3 years in this project. But one that I picked up a couple of months ago, it was myself and Sam that picked it up from an estate agent based in Glasgow who had a house in Woodmill Terrace. It's a non-standard construction 3-bed house. Now, obviously, as I've just mentioned about 3-bed houses, I love 3-bed houses. To get a 3-bed house deal right now in Dunfermline's like hobby horses shit. You ain't getting them. You're not getting them at all. You probably wouldn't even get one on the market for under 100 grand, 110 grand right now. So we managed to get it. So the backstory on it was an estate agent based in Glasgow was looking for the client was looking for a quick sale, but they weren't willing to put a home report on the property because they were told we would get a zero valuation because there was some flood work that had kind of damaged the ceilings in the downstairs of the house. So obviously, if you can't put a home report on, you can't legally put it on the market. So she came to who she knew in the area that would buy these deals. So we went in and offered, and we got it for 87 grand. And the idea was to flip it straight onto auction because we knew that there'd still be a deal in it for someone. We bought it cheap enough. The market's going nuts. 3-bed houses are going in that area, probably going at 140, 145. So I thought even if we sell it and make a quick buck on it, somebody can do their own renovation and probably make a little bit. If it's somebody's own house, they can get a bit of a deal and put their stamp on it. So we just flipped it straight to auction a week later, and I think 6 weeks within picking up the keys, we sold it for 111 grand. So we made 17 grand profit in 6 weeks, and all I did was go in and wreck the place a little bit and make it look like it needed to be like a development opportunity. So the market was ridiculous. It was playing to the market and playing to my experience, I suppose. But risk reward, that one's got to be one of the best deals because I went in for an hour, chucked some shit in the garden, put some stones down, made it look wash, and went on my way to Aberdeen that day. So it was pretty much the only thing I did on that project, and to make that profit was probably more than the Viewfield Terrace project for a year's worth of work.
You just did the fun bit, going in with the sledgehammer. That's the best bit, isn't it?
Nice.
But that would have been a good candidate for Homes Under the Hammer or something like that. Do you know what I mean? That would have been cool. No, that's a strategy that I've seen a few going through the auction, and you can tell that's what they've done because you would have seen them on with an estate agent a couple of months before. Do you know what I mean? And they've gone in, they've probably ripped it apart a wee bit more and then flipped it back on the market. I've seen a few people do that, but if you could get more of them, that would be a killer strategy, that, eh?
Yeah, I've got the keys on another one on Friday for that strategy.
Oh, brilliant. Nice one. I'll come up and give you a hand. I'll take my sledgehammer up.
That's
right.
So it's a bit of
Good
diversification on best and worst case deals from us then.
Aye, so that pretty much sums it up. So there you go. Dunfermline for you, £67,000 in that office to residential. That's a pretty good one. The most I ever made on a flip was 35k. That was in Paisley, a 3-bedroom flat in Greenock Road, back in 2017. And then I don't know why I haven't done many flips since. Just get tied up with the business and stuff. So yeah, I did.
They're very time consuming. They're good for building your pot, but they are very time consuming as well.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a lot of the costs that people don't factor in these days, as well as, you know, buying, holding, and selling costs. I mean, that on an average kind of flat house, it's probably 10 grand of fees that most people won't even think about. By the time you pay ADS and council tax, utilities, mortgage costs against it, and keeping it for 6 months, like you'll be 10 grand at least on these fees.
I tell you what, a big demotivator for me is, not to put a negative spin on it, but just recently, a demotivator for me has been dealing with tradesmen at the moment, and all this kind of materials shortage and costs going through the roof and all that. And then I'm looking at margins and thinking, right, I could make, 15 grand off of this, but like I've got all this hassle as well,
No, I'd agree. It's certainly difficult at the moment with trades. Feeling that pain point with Kelly, the commercial project at the moment.
Yes, and if you want to know about that one, just get on Stephen's Instagram and you'll see the pain that he's going through at the moment. So it's not all plain sailing in this property world, is it?
No, certainly isn't, mate. Certainly isn't. But it's been good to catch up with you and good to chat about the best and worst deals.
Great stuff, guys. Thanks very much for listening. And as always, we appreciate your support over on Apple Podcasts. If you could leave us a review, that would be really appreciative. And also, if you could follow us on social media, join our Facebook group on the Scottish Property Podcast Facebook page. Join in the discussion there.
Brilliant, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye for now. Hang on a wee second. I will end this live.